Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and this is my very first Pokemon Showdown battle that I have done in a very, very long time. I haven't played a Showdown battle in at least 2 years, and it's good to be back. 7th Gen meta, UU battles, and not much has changed. It's like a typical OU/UU mix from the 6th Gen, and I'm the guy from the top right, and my opponent is on the bottom left of the screen. And let us check my team out a little. Let's face it out. I've got 3 battles for you guys featuring this team, and I haven't played Showdown in a very long time. I haven't played Pokemon competitive in a very long time. My skills are very rusty, and I'm trying to muster everything I can, all of my knowledge, all of my experience in the metagame. Thankfully, the UU metagame does not have too many 7th gen Pokemon and abilities and meta changes that I am aware of because I know nothing of them, and the UU meta is something that I'm very familiar with, so it's easier for me to cope and keep pace with. So I'm leading off with Clefable. No, I'm not leading off with Clefable. My team consists of Clefable, Gliscor, Chandelure, Mega Aerodactyl, Arcanine, and Raikou. Now, this is pretty much a very random team. I just saw some Pokemon and decided to throw them into battle. So, without further ado, my opponent's team also has an Mega Aerodactyl, so I'm guessing it's very popular in this meta. Alomomola, which is a very good defensive wall. Togekiss, which has fallen from OU. Tentacruel, which could be a problem, Gengar, which is always a problem, and a Zelf, which is something that I remember from the PBR days. It is very dangerous, and I'm very well equipped to deal with it. I am very experienced in dealing with a Zelf, so that shouldn't be much of a problem. But let us go into the battle, and let us start. My opponent's going to lead with a, sorry about that if you heard that. I'm going to lead with my Mega Aerodactyl and go for the Mega Evolution. I'm going to go for the Hunclaws because I'm pretty sure that my opponent wants to lead with the Stealth Rocks, and that's what they do. So I'm going to go for an Iron Head, hoping to get a flinch because I wanted the Hax God to see if they would look kindly on me, and I'm very lucky that I get a flinch, which is cool. And it's kind of bad for my opponent, but what can you do? This is beginner's luck because I'm starting all the way from the beginning, competitive and whatnot. So Azelf is out of the way, which is very good for me. So I'm going to go for a Stone Edge to see how much it does. It does about half. So my opponent's going to go for the Scold, which is bad for me because it gets the burn, which sucks because, 30% chances. What can you do? So if I didn't get the burn, I would have been able to take that Alomomola out, I guess. So I'm going to switch out into my Clefable, which can take care of the burn and push me back to a considerable amount of health. So my opponent has the Wish. We all know that Alomomola has the Wish. I've watched Insane Gamers battle, and he's used Alomomola in the past. So I'm going to go for a... I think I went for aromatherapy here. Yes, that's what I did. I got my burn out of the way, which is very important because if Mega Aerodactyl is burned, he's pretty much useless. So I go for the Protect to see what this Gengar goes for, and it goes for a Will-O-Wisp, which is okay, I guess. So didn't go for the attack. He didn't go for the Poison type move to take my Clefable out. So if that's the case, then I'm going to switch into my Arcanine, which is not that much of a problem because even though with Stealth Rock 25% damage is 25% damage, and I'm pretty much going to sack him off here because I was really expecting my opponent to, I don't know, maybe switch. I don't know what my thought process was there at the time, but I will send in my Chandelure, which is my Scarfer, and Scarf Chandelure is always a good idea. So I'm going to go for the Shadow Ball, take this Gengar out. I have a modest Scarf Chandelure, which is, it helps me boost my special attack even more. I have max special attack, and I prefer it that way. So I'm pretty sure that I cannot take the Togekiss down, which is a problem. So I'm going to have to send out my Clefable, which is practically its counterpart in this battle. It is its counter and its counterpart. So Clefable goes for the paralysis, gets paralyzed, and Togekiss is going to go for the very well known to all, the Syrian Grace Paraflinch shenanigans. But the Hex Gods will favor me once again as Togekiss misses the Air Slash. I go for the Witch, I guess. Yes, that's what I did. And I'm going to send out my Mega Aerodactyl. My opponent cannot touch me unless they go for the Air. If they went for the Moon Blast, that would have been the end for my Mega Aerodactyl. So the good thing is that I do have Stone Edge on this thing, and it will be a critical hit. And even if it didn't have a critical hit, I don't think it really mattered. It might have mattered, it might have not, but Stone Edge does have a high critical hit ratio, so I can't say it was that haxy for me. So I'm going to switch out into my Clefable, which can take special hits. No, actually go for the Raikou. Why would I? Oh, yeah, Lemon Water loses to Electric. So my opponent goes for the Scald, does very little damage, does not get the burn, and from this point and on, my opponent's Pokemon are very susceptible to Electric type moves. That was the best move that I could have done. So I'm going to go for the Thunderbolt, do a considerable amount of damage, and that Tentacruel tanks it like a boss. It does just under half, but it's not enough because my Raikou is a Raikou, and that's what Raikou does. So Tentacruel is a very interesting Pokemon to use. I want to use it in the future. So my opponent has Aerodactyl. I wish I had Arcanine right now because I could have used an Intimidate and a Will-O-Wisp on this thing. It's a very cool Pokemon to use Arcanine because Pokemon that are strong against it might want to go for the super effective move, and the Will-O-Wisp and the Intimidate on Arcanine into Pokemon that it is weak against is a very ballsy move. So my opponent goes for the Earthquake. I predicted like a boss with my Gliscor because all Aerodactyls in the world, except for mine, have Earthquake. So I'm going to set up the late game rocks. And that's pretty much it. So my opponent, I guess that it's kind of game from this point and onwards. I'm going to send in my Clefable. My opponent can't do much to me right now because I have my special wall intact. I have my physical wall intact. And my opponent only has his physical sweeper. This Alomomola cannot touch me at all. So my opponent can only send in Aerodactyl. I'm going to go for the Witch because I really want some health for my... No, I actually go for the Aromatherapy. You see, when you actually watch your own battles, you make decisions that do not agree with the decisions that you made in the first place. So that shows that you have multiple, thought processes going on in your mind. And yeah. So I'm going to go for the Gliscor. I do heal my poison, but that's not a problem for me because as long as he doesn't have knockoff, I can set up the poison once again. And the Toxic Orb is going to give me some health back after, the turn it activates. So I'll go for the Toxic and it just spits in front of the field, and that Aerodactyl must be possibly laughing at me. And I'm actually surprised that it doesn't have Ice Fang. I mean, if Gliscor is such a threat in the meta, why don't you have at least Ice Fang? But Iron Head's okay as well, I guess, but it's not going to do much because Toxic plus Protect plus, all that stuff, Gliscor is very annoying to use. So if you don't have Ice Beam or move Gliscor is weak to, then you have a problem. So my opponent gets poisoned, so it's just a matter of time, and time is something that I have a lot of. So I should have predicted the switch there, so I could have gone for a second Toxic, but it's not a problem for me. I go for the Protect, just to get some health back, and that is pretty much it. My opponent has, I guess, lost the match. That's it for them. I'm going to send in my Raikou, I guess. No, my Clefable. Phew. I would have sent in Raikou to seal the deal. But my opponent goes for the Scald, and I can wish some health back into my Raikou and start, the late game sweep. That is what I would have done unless my opponent, continued. But my opponent forfeits, which is cool, I guess, and that is the end of the first game. So let me take you to game 2, which is kind of shorter, but I played 3 games and I want to share them with you guys. So okay, this is game number 2. Now, game number 2, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of shorter, but it's also enjoyable as well because my opponent has a very cool team with Mega Sharpedo, Nidoking, which is very nice to see, the Azelf, which I'm supposing it's a lead, Clefable, which we all love using Clefable, Holucha and Tarina, which are Pokemon that I'm not very used to watching in this game. I'm not used to seeing in this game. Now, I'm not very familiar with Tsarina, but I do know that it's a grass type, and I do have countermeasures for the grass type. It's known as Chandelure, so let's get into the game now. Let me turn the music off. And my opponent has the Azelf lead. Again, we see this lead again, and I told you guys that I'm very well adapted to using it. Packs Taunt, it even packs Explosion. So I go for the Volt Switch, hoping to break its Sash, because I was thinking that it might want to set up Stealth Rocks, and the Sash, it's broken, and I do have Chandelure, and I can threaten it with a Shadow Ball. There are very few Pokemon that can resist a Shadow Ball from this Pokemon. Now, my opponent is going to send in the Nidoking, and I'm going to stay in because I predicted my opponent to predict me to switch into Gliscor or something. And my opponent goes for the Ice Beam into my Chandelure, which is fantastic. My opponent made an over-prediction, which will cost him his Nidoking. Now, that Nidoking was a problem for my entire team because Nidoking has such a diverse move pool. And that thing out of the way is a great help. Now, Sharpedo, we all know how to deal with it. Sharpedo is not that much of a surprise ever since it got its speed boost. It's pretty much like a UU Water-type Blaziken. So, anyway, I'm going to intimidate Sharpedo, and this is the tactic that I was telling you guys about. Sharpedo with its Arcanine is weak to Sharpedo, but it does pack the Intimidate, and I actually went for the Will-O-Wisp, hoping to get a burn on it because it pretty much waits my opponent to attack me. Now, I missed the Will-O-Wisp, which is horrible, and Hawlucha comes in and goes for the Swords Dance. And it really doesn't matter because I do have Clefable in the back, but I do go for the Will-O-Wisp just to hurt it some more. And Hawlucha, a burnt Hawlucha, is not a very good Hawlucha. It's pretty much rendered useless unless he throws that Clefable back in the battle. So if I don't take that Clefable out, nothing is pretty much a given. So my opponent goes for the high attack. It has a Power Herb, and it does about 45% with a burn, which is very impressive. Now, if that Pokemon didn't have the burn, it could have done a lot more damage than that. So my opponent goes for the Acrobatics, which is a very interesting moveset to have the Power Herb and the Acrobatics afterwards. But like I said before, the burn is going to render this Pokemon useless. So I can go for the Wish, I can go for the Moonblast. There's nothing that my opponent can do right now. I go for the Swords Dance ×3 attack, but it won't matter because I will get the Moonblast, I will pick up the Knockout, and I will heal myself all the way to full health, which is very nice to see. And almost full health. Now, my opponent forfeits here. There was pretty much nothing that my opponent could do because Mega Sharpedo is weak to my Raikou. And in case that didn't work out, I still had my Arcanine intact and in the back, which could deal with that Tsarina. And that is pretty much game number 2. So let us move on to game number 3, which starts in a few. Okay, this is game number 3. So, I'm battling a very skilled opponent. Now, one thing about the UU metagame and generally any metagame, if you're ranked high enough, then you can play against opponents that have pretty much standard sets, and predicting and, getting into momentum is pretty much standard, and the one that actually is 1 or 2 steps ahead can win because the sets are standard, the movesets are standard, the EV spreads are standard, and the roles that the Pokemon play are standard, and the moves are standard as well. But when you're in a lower tier, people like to try things. I've seen in lower tiers people use moves that are not used in mainstream OU and UU battles, and it's pretty easy to get caught off guard in UU battles, in lower ranked battles. So. Without further ado, let us get into the game where my opponent has a Polion, an Arcanine, and a Gliscor of their own, and a Chandelure of their own. So that is pretty much a very solid core, these 3 Pokemon, and I guess that I'm very happy that I'm using them. And my opponent has the Latias and Sharpedo again, so let us get into the game and see what to expect. My opponent sends in their Polion, I send in my Aerodactyl, and there's nothing I can do to touch this thing unless I had like a Thunderfang or something, but that wouldn't even scratch this Empoleon. So I'm going to go into my Raikou because I can't take anything that my opponent has because I have decent special defense. My opponent packs a Hydro Pump. I'm guessing it might be Scarfed. I'm not sure because I didn't take the turn. And like an idiot, I go for the Volt Switch because I over-predicted. I was hoping that my opponent would stay in for some reason and go for a second Hydro Pump because he could take me out with a second hit, possibly. And I'm going to switch into my Aerodactyl that can take an Earthquake anytime. But my opponent sets up a Stealth Rock, which is, a proper move to go for because Raikou had to switch out there. So my opponent goes into the Sharpedo. I'm going to Mega Evolve and go for the Hunclaws. And anything that takes a Hunclaw Stone Edge is not going to have fun. And neither am I if I stay in the Sharpedo. So I'm going to send out my Arcanine to get the Intimidate on the Sharpedo, but I am weakened due to Stealth Rocks. And hold on, let me take a sip because I'm actually kind of thirsty. And that's what I was telling you about. Unpredictable and unorthodox sets in lower ranked battles. Now, who would have in the right mind a Tough Claws, Hydro Pump, Sharpedo? That's the weird thing. Now, I did manage to resist it somehow, and I did get the burn on Latias, which is okay, but it's not okay at the same time because Toxic Poison would have been a lot better on this thing. So my opponent has Latias. It's a problem that I'm used to dealing with Latias. Now, I do send in the Clefable to add some pressure and fish out that Empoleon, and in comes Gliscor, which is bad for me because I am going to Wish and I'm going to try and pass that Wish onto my Aerodactyl, I think, because I do have Ice Fang on Aerodactyl. So I'm going to try and catch my opponent off guard, but no, I actually go for the Gliscor. Why do I go for the Gliscor? I don't know. But my opponent, like a boss, predicts me switch into something and goes for the Knockoff. I should use Knockoff. It's a good move. It's a very, very good and useful move. And Gliscor is going to be a problem. So my opponent over-predicts me to switch out into something that can't take an Earthquake. I'm going to set up my own Stealth Rocks because we cannot hurt each other. I do know that I can send out my Aerodactyl that can resist anything that this Gliscor sends in. So my opponent is going to send out their Empoleon. There is nothing I can do here. I cannot touch this Empoleon whatsoever. So I did go for the Hunclaws, predicting. No, did I go for Hunclaws? I think I did that in a later turn. Sorry, I'm spoiling the battle. I'm going to send in Clefable, which is pretty much a ballsy move because if this opponent has a Steel type move, it is not going to resist it very well. So Clefable here is holding on pretty well against Napoleon, and I switched out my Clefable because I thought to myself that if this guy has any moves that should not be. If this guy has... No, he's not a Scarfer because he goes for Defog. So, he goes for the... I knew that he was going to switch into the Gliscor, so that is why I switched into my Mega Aerodactyl. And he switches out. Yes, he did. And Gliscor is not going to be a problem right now because I'm in a very good position. I can go for the Hunclaws. He cannot touch me. He cannot harm me. And he goes for the Stealth Rocks again. And I did go for the Ice Fang, I guess. I think I did. No, I went for the Hunclaws a second time because I was predicting a switch or something. So I'm at +2 attack, and my Stone Edges cannot miss right now. So I do go for the Stone Edge, and it does a considerable amount of damage, which is fantastic. It does a whole chunk of damage, but my opponent is able to connect with Hydro Pump and take out my Aerodactyl, which is bad. But what can you do? You cannot always avoid these moves forever. Now this is the part, this is a crucial part. I'm down 6-4, and my opponent is pretty much sweeping me. And this is where the magic of Chandelure comes in, ladies and gentlemen. I do predict my opponent to go into a Pokemon that cannot take Shadow Ball unless it's Sharpedo. But even though I do go for the Shadow Ball, now my opponent's move should have been Sharpedo, and that is what he did, and that's a good thing about Sharpedo. So I managed to send out my Clefable, and my opponent cannot pretty much touch me, cannot do anything to me. My opponent goes for the Hydro Pump again, which is stupid. I mean, why would you go for the Hydro Pump again? Why wouldn't you have like Waterfall or Aqua Jet or something? But I don't know, maybe my opponent knows better, and they go for the Crunch, and they take out my Clefable, which was pretty much the answer to Sharpedo. But I do pack the energy ball in this thing, and taking it out is so important. And I'm very grateful that this thing is out of the way. So my opponent goes into the Latias that can take an energy ball any time of the day, and I have to sack my Gliscor because it is very useless at this point. It's already burned, I can do nothing to it. My opponent goes for the Draco Meter, destroys my Gliscor, but it lowers its special attack, and Latias is now exposed to my Chandelure. And this is where Chandelure shines, ladies and gentlemen. This is why I prefer Modest Scarf over Timid. Chandelure comes in for a final bout, and this is where the sweep begins. Now, my opponent sends out an Arcanine, which is not a problem for me because I will go for the Shadow Ball, and I will do as much damage as I possibly can, and I do get the special defense drop, which is very fortunate. Now, my opponent goes for the Extreme Speed. I'm immune. Maybe they predicted me to switch out or something, I'm not sure, but Extreme Speed will not affect Chandelure. And that is 1 kill for my Chandelure. That makes it... Actually, that's 3 kills for my Chandelure. This thing's on a rampage. It took out my opponent's team. This is the 4th kill. My Chandelure took out 4 out of the 6 Pokemon. This is why I love this thing so much. And my opponent goes into their Empoleon, and this is the battle. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go for the Shadow Ball. They resist the hit practically because I do not take it out. And they use the Hydro Pump, which I'm so bloody fortunate. And I'm so very, very grateful, because if they had connected, then Raikou would have had a difficult time taking out that Gliscor. So Shadow Ball does do a considerable amount of damage. And Gliscor now is exposed to my Shadow Ball. It will not take this very well. And I go for the Shadow Ball, hoping to do some damage. And I do get the special defense drop, which is very, very important. Now my opponent goes for the knockoff, knocks off my Scarf. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to send in Raikou. I do have extrasensory. I wish I had Hidden Power Ice at this point, but I do have extrasensory. And I'm thinking that the special defense drop is a blessing because I can do some damage. I'm not going to give up just yet. I know I'm in a disadvantageous position. And my opponent goes for the Protect to get as much health as possible. I do get the extrasensory into the Protect, and my opponent heals at 60. Now I go for the extrasensory again to see if I can do some damage. And ladies and gentlemen, without a critical hit, without anything, extrasensory picks up the knockout, and Raikou stands victorious. Raikou managed to pull this off. I do accept that I was kind of lucky because, you know, beginner's luck and all that. I do consider myself a beginner from the beginning because I haven't played this game in a very long while. And Chandelure just sweeped like about 5 out of 6 Pokemon, and could have sweeped Gliscor. But that's Pokemon for you. You get lucky sometimes, you get unlucky other times, and I'm very grateful that this time the hacks was in my favor. I know that there will be a lot of battles where hacks will not be favoring me, but what can you do? Same way my opponent lost his stupid hacks and misses and all that stuff is the way I've lost in many other battles myself. So I hope you guys enjoyed my very first Pokemon Showdown 7th Gen battle, and next time I hope that I can entertain you again. I said I will be hosting some Showdown battles, but at a very slow pace because I still have my military service. That is something to consider. It is a problem because, you know, I sometimes do return home. In, you know, 2 out of 3 days I do get to return home, but still that is not a given. But I still have about 84 days to finish. Anyway, so in 84 days I will be a civilian again. I will no longer be military personnel, and I can do Pokemon Showdown battles at a very much steadier pace. So I hope you guys enjoyed this battle, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching. The Prodigal Legion 723 out.